What's up? Thank you so much again for tuning into our podcast today, the Youth Care Podcast. And I'm really excited about today because we've spoken about healthcare, we've spoken about self-esteem, we've spoken about a number of things on this podcast. Yeah. But today we get to talk about what happens, like the consequences of neglecting self-care. You know what I mean? Like, I'm excited about that. That we know it. If you don't do this, is what's going to happen to you. But also joining us on our podcast today is Kumbu Simkonda, who is the field technical advisor from the Pediatric Adolescent Africa Treatment. I know I've butchered that, but it's called PATA. So it's Pediatric Adolescent Treatment Africa. Yes, I got it right. Before you said it.
So well.
It really wasn't, but I got the hang of it. Do you know what you've learned from this? Whatever you do, keep going. You get it right.
Or repeat
Look
it
at me
twice.
becoming a motivational
Or you
speaker.
can repeat it twice. Like Mulenga did.
Welcome to the show, Agobu. Don't mind him. He's always fighting.
Welcome to the podcast. It's a podcast, so we have to ensure that we podcast the gentleman.
The man might be nervous. Don't do that. Don't do that.
I think that's basically why we come here on the Youth Care Podcast. Part of self-care is us ensuring that we care for our guests enough to make them comfortable.
That is very true. Anyway, let's jump into the conversation because this is quite a heavy conversation as well. But let's start from that aspect because we're talking consequences of neglecting self-care. So I want to understand as well, how can neglecting self-care, I'm jumping right into it. How can neglecting self-care during this transition, especially from adulthood to transition to adulthood, impact the physical, mental, spiritual, and all the aspects of a well-being person? How does that affect a person?
Well, thanks so much, guys, for the warm welcome. I'm super excited to be here and to feature on this podcast. First things first, I would want to maybe just to mention the fact that when we talk about self-care, to some this may sound as a new concept, but self-care really just talks about an individual, a household, a family, a community, just being responsible and taking care of their own health without or with little support from healthcare providers. And this concept came and rose to its significance when we saw the effect of COVID-19. It was much more pronounced and it has gone now almost everywhere. Governments, donors and institutions trying to institutionalize the aspect of self-care. And this now even becomes more significant when we talk about adolescents and young people, because adolescent stage is a very critical stage when adolescents or young people experience all sorts of life issues and
George
all
can
that.
relate because it's transitioning from adolescence.
You can't relate, unfortunately.
Yeah, I can't.
You no longer transition.
No, I'm grown.
Yes, so this transition comes with a whole lot of problems, experiments, and all that. So it's very important to take care of one's health, and neglecting this transition will have a number of repercussions on one's health, either spiritually, mentally, and physically. When we start to look at, for instance, if one neglects their health, and they tend to have to get infected with HIV, they get an STI, and all this will probably affect their growth and transition into adulthood. For instance, HIV has been in existence for over 40 years now, but you find that the stigma and discrimination that goes on in the community is so much. It further affects your mental health because now you're not living fully healthy and all. You find that it now affects how you're going to relate with your friends, the sorts of behaviors that you're going to indulge in and all that. Now this social behavioral change communication aspect comes in to just help these young people, because we understand that if one neglects their self-care, one, for instance, for a teenage girl, they will fall pregnant. And in most cases, especially in rural areas or rural communities, you find that if someone falls pregnant, that may be the end of their school journey. Then this person will live in poverty. If they get married, fortunately, they will either get married to someone who's going to abuse them because either they are not contributing. Then we are talking about the issues of gender and sexual-based violence. Remember, we are commemorating the 16 days of activism against GBV. You find that all these issues are everywhere. When you talk about the 2021 statistics of mental health and suicide, we had about 17.5 to 100 per 100,000 men committing suicide, which translates to about 1,639 or somewhere there, about 6.2 per 100 women committing suicide in 2021, which translates to about 584 somewhere there about. So all these,
Who is coming with the data?
so
We're
so
hearing
this
the numbers
all
there.
this affects one's transition and into adulthood, because now you make a lot of mistakes during your adolescence and immediately you neglect that aspect, then it's disastrous.
Now let's talk about some potential long-term consequences that might be on somebody's physical body, as well as let's focus on the physical body.
Physical
what are some of
aspect,
the
yeah.
potential long-term consequences that or challenges that might be seen on somebody who's neglected themselves during this period or stage?
Well, there are a number of long-term consequences that may result as a result of neglecting one's self-care. For instance, if either one is not adhering to medication, their physical shape, outlook will probably not be with them. When you look at things such as obesity, these are some of the long-term consequences, and you find that people would want to go to the gym, they would want to exercise because they are realizing that it's now too late, and it becomes problematic. So gaining weight and all the struggles that come with it, you find that your bones, in terms of the tissues, all that, even into adulthood, you find that your physical strength is no longer there because you had neglected your self-care aspect of it when you are growing. And I'll tell you that obesity nowadays is more common amongst adolescents and young people. I don't know, is it the foods that we are eating, the kind of lifestyles that we are, you find that when you're in uni, you want the burger, you want all these kinds of fast foods and all that. So that in a long run will now affect your physical well-being. And this is why now when we're talking about self-care, we encourage a lot of exercise. People need to exercise regularly. You need to find what is it that makes you feel happy and just be in the mood. For instance, I'll tell you that I'm a marathoner, so I participate in all sorts of marathons. So next week I'll be participating in the Orathon. It's called Orange Marathon, to commemorate the 16 days of activism. So I take that as a way of taking care of my own
self-care.
Yeah, as a way of taking care of myself. Yeah.
That's very interesting as well. But I want to touch on stress and anxiety because especially as adolescents, that's one thing adolescents get to deal with as well. Yeah. Even adults get to deal with anxiety and stress. Now I want to know if these two, anxiety and stress, if they're left unmanaged, how do they affect the immune system, the overall physical well-being of a person, the mental state of a person, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, so you see, when we talk about high blood pressure, when we talk about these cardiovascular diseases, they are as a result of neglecting one's health in that aspect. So I think when you look at some of the recent data and statistics, you find that it's now us young people that are being faced with all sorts of high blood pressure. When you back them say ni wambuya or washkulu, that kind of a thing. So it's the grandparents that were associated with these cardiovascular
up and now everyone
like no alina sugar, you find someone is yeah, you see. So all this is as a result of neglecting that. But also when you look at anxiety, so anxiety would not just come from nowhere. Sometimes when you gain weight, there's a lot of body shaming in society and in communities. So as this young person goes to school, they are teasing this young person, they are laughing at this young person. This young person will have all sorts of depression, anxieties. They'll be having a lack of sleep, and just lack of sleep in itself gives you all sorts of these anxiety issues and problems. So for me, I feel if you don't deal with anxiety, if you don't deal with stress, it will in the long run affect your mental health, it will affect your physical health, and even your spiritual health, because you are depressed, you are stressed. You don't want to go to a place where maybe there are a lot of people, the way people will be looking at you and all that. So I think these are some of the issues that we need to look at and be able to address.
Now let's talk about the role that self-care can play in mitigating the risk of mental health issues during the transition between childhood, adolescenthood, going to adulthood.
So I think the issue of self-care and how it can mitigate this is that when we talk about the concept of self-care, remember when I was just starting this conversation, we mentioned that when we are talking self-care, we're just talking about people being equipped with knowledge and information to take care of their own health without or with little support from healthcare providers. So if we have knowledge, or if communities are aware on how to take care of their own health, for instance, if it's we go into reproductive health, if young people know how to take care of their own health in that aspect, the physical health through exercise and all that. So it's all about knowledge and ensuring that we know each stage of one's growth, because you find that a young person who have a wet dream, they'll be freaking out. What is it that has happened? For an adolescent girl, they will experience their first menses and they'll freak out. And in certain households, they will not even have who to talk to.
True.
They'll go to school the following day in that state. They'll be laughed at if maybe they are stained and all that. So all this, so it all requires that there should be knowledge available in the communities. And where can people get knowledge? This knowledge or information can be accessed online, but when you go online, you need to look at reputable institutions where you should be able to access this information. For instance, here we are talking about Copper Rose. Copper Rose has got a website. Pediatric Adolescent Treatment Africa has got the Pata Linking and Learning Hub. They have got the website where you can get information. The Ministry of Health and its key stakeholders have got all these sites and applications where one can access quality and factual information. So we need to look at this information, and we are living in a digital era now. We need to access this information in digital spaces, but also in our communities. There are places such as the health facility, youth-friendly spaces. Young people can go there, interact with fellow young people who have been trained over time to share factual information about one's health. So I think we cannot overemphasize the fact that we need a lot of knowledge sharing, and this knowledge sharing should start with us by using this podcast, by using traditional media, radio and TV, and all these other platforms.
We've spoken about knowledge and just making sure that knowledge is available as well, which brings me to this question then, because I want to know the role that family gets to play, and especially when adolescents are transitioning to adulthood, to ensure that they also don't neglect self-care, because usually in these homes, we got African homes, let's be honest with ourselves. You're trying to take 5 minutes to rest, your mother's like, but so, to Sadia, you were there, no? Like, that's, you know what I mean? Like, what role do parents play in this aspect as well?
Parents, guardians, or caregivers are very key in our generation, especially because when elders speak to us, they say, imawafana mulibe mental resilience.
At we are weak.
We are weak. Yeah, you see. So I think parents and guardians have got a key role to play when it comes to the aspect of self-care. But not only the aspect of physical and mental health, but also even in this information sharing. we are now living at a time where you do not need to use scare messages. Okay? You don't need to use scare messages.
Don't say that again. Say it in the camera.
Yeah, you don't need, dear parents and guardians, you don't need to use scare messages nowadays when you're discussing or talking to adolescents and young people or your children, because this information that you will not share with them is everywhere. They will access it online. They will access it on their phones. So I want you parents and guardians to be the ones to share factual information with your children, older sisters, older brothers. Share this information with your siblings, because if you don't share this factual information, they are going to learn from people that are not going to mean well for them. And society out there is actually mean to adolescents and young people. So it's this responsibility of promoting self-care, knowledge, and reproductive health in homes starts with you, dear parents and guardians. Because if a parent takes care of your own health, they look at you, say, okay, maybe she doesn't look okay. What? Not, why like they start screaming. We want when George is stressed, someone should be able to say, my man, are you okay? Do you need to, maybe you need to rest. Okay, do you need us to take a walk? Do you need to us to go and watch soccer? Someone should be able to pick the mind of someone. And because we are just busy in our own world, we find that young people are now committing suicide when they had someone who can actually solve their problem. I was having a session I was teaching mental health at one of the learning institutions, and I learned that one of the young person died without the roommate knowing that he was depressed. And this young person went and died at home. But then this young person, now the roommate now started sharing to say, how can I know that my friend is depressed or is going through things? Then I realized and shared to say, nowadays, we are looking at the next person. If I share with Esther, if I share
the whole world
with,
will know.
Yeah, maybe I'll say, I will find it per status and and then I'll be like, I'm from sharing this message with her, or I'm sharing this message with George, and then I'm seeing this thing that is pointing towards. Some people will go towards posting more on their status, or withdrawing posting more on their status, and you'll be able to check in. Today I had to check with my friend. Anyway, now better check status. I wanted to see what you've posted today. Kulibebo and say kulibebo ma posta vaso content yaso nifuno checking what is there today, because I learned these things from you. That we'll be able to pick. If you have a phone call, if you have a physical conversation, you'll be able to pick one or two things, and you'll be able to know the right way to speak to someone. Sometimes we don't, like, you can come to me, or I can come to you with a problem. I don't want you to say anything. Maybe sometimes I just want you to listen. I just want to vent and all that.
And when somebody comes to you, let me just point that out. When somebody comes to you, it's not a problem competition. You see people that do that.
But
yes.
If my problem is bigger than yours.
No. Why did you open up first? Your friend comes to you. No. Why you doing that?
I found a space has allowed for me to
share.
Allow your friend to share. The friend came to you first. You didn't want to share.
Yeah. It's not problem sharing competition.
It is not.
But it becomes a conversation starter.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today, Wankumbu.
Thank you so much.
Hopefully we can have a problem sharing competition pretty soon.
Yeah, provided you give me a chance for me to open up as well. Oh God, I'll open up.
Listen, thank you very much for joining us on the Youth Care Talk Show. Youth Care
podcast brought to you by Copperos Zambia with support from AIDS Fund. Remember as well to follow Copperos across all social media platforms, because that's where you can watch and get more information about some of the conversations that we are having. My name is Esther Mbenga, and of course that is my co-host George Samuel Piri, and today our guest was Wankumbu, who's taught us a lot of things, especially about neglecting self-care. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Feel free to catch the next episode right here on Copperos Zambia. Bye guys.